Man, bro, did a song with Lil Ty. Hey, y'all, shut y'all. They ain't gonna do shit ass niggas up, man.
The moment Rooms hit the internet, it wasn't just another drop. It felt like a political summit between rival nations while the war was still active. When Chief Keef appeared alongside NBA YoungBoy, the culture didn't see a collaboration, saw a line crossed. And in drill, lines are not symbolic, they're territorial. Within hours, timelines were split like fault lines after an earthquake. Because this wasn't about music quality, it was about memory, about who stood where when blood was spilled. And psychologically, communities built on trauma don't process nuance, they process allegiance. This resonated because fans don't just consume drill, they inherit its loyalties. So when Keef vibed in the studio like everything was neutral, O-Block supporters saw something else: normalization of the enemy. Now critics will argue this is just business, and commercially that's correct. Cross-market collaborations statistically increase streaming velocity and algorithm reach. But in a culture where identity is currency, perception outweighs intent. And that's why the reaction wasn't curiosity, it was combustion. So the real question is, was this a song or was it a signal?
Lil Tim responded to people being mad at Chief Keef and NBA YoungBoy just announcing a new collab dropping soon. This is something to talk about.
To understand the emotional detonation, you have to understand what Chief Keef represents. He isn't just from O-Block. He industrialized its sound. Parkway Gardens became a global brand because a teenager on house arrest uploaded raw dispatches from a war zone. When Kanye West remixed I Don't Like, drill stopped being local and became exportable. Data from early 2010 streaming shifts shows Chicago drill influenced scenes from London to Brooklyn within 3 years. That's cultural acceleration. But here's the surgical truth. Keef was 16 when the industry crowned him. 16 managing fame, money, and active threat simultaneously. Survival required distance. Yet distance, in street psychology, translates to abandonment. At a human level, those who stay behind often reinterpret escape as betrayal because it forces them to confront their own immobility. So when O-Block looks at Keef today, they don't just see a pioneer. They see someone who made it out and never looked back. And that unresolved tension never disappeared. It just waited for a spark.
I'm starting to see why people had a saying that the best thing Chief Keef could have done was distance himself from O-Block and get out of Chicago.
By 2012, Chief Keef wasn't just buzzing. He was detonating the industry from inside a juvenile ankle monitor. Back from the Dead wasn't polished. It was primal. When Kanye West jumped on the I Don't Like remix, drill didn't just go viral. It went institutional. A $6 million deal with Interscope Records followed. And suddenly a 16-year-old from Parkway Gardens was carrying the economic expectations of an entire neighborhood on his shoulders. That's where the mythology starts. But the pressure rarely gets discussed. Because while platinum plaques were being printed, the streets were still printing obituaries. And as Keef relocated for safety, the emotional gravity inside O-Block shifted toward King Von, the storyteller who didn't leave, the one who embodied continuity. So when Vaughn was killed in 2020 and Timothy Leaks later walked free after prosecutors cited self-defense, it didn't just wound the block, it reshaped its identity. Grief hardened into doctrine. Doctrine hardened into loyalty politics. And when Keef later stood next to NBA YoungBoy, the symbolism collided with that doctrine. Now, critics will argue Keef owes no one permanent allegiance, especially after reported fractures and betrayals over the years. And strategically, that argument holds weight. No contract binds him to eternal block politics. But emotionally, O-Block doesn't operate on contracts. It operates on continuity. And psychologically, when a founding figure appears to validate someone linked, directly or indirectly, to your deepest loss, it feels like history bending in the wrong direction. This isn't about one collaboration. It's about unresolved trauma meeting modern ambition. And that collision was always going to be explosive.
What parts of the body?
I get shot in my right hip bone and I get shot on my ass. It go in and out though.
When the numbers for rooms started climbing, millions of views in days, it confirmed this wasn't fringe drama. It was mainstream momentum. And that's what intensified the outrage. Because success amplifies perceived disrespect. In conflict psychology, nothing stings like watching your adversary prosper publicly. Affiliates labeled it a snake move. Permanent bans were declared. The rhetoric escalated fast. But here's the analytical layer. The modern music economy rewards expansion, not isolation. Based on recent release trends, cross-regional features statistically outperform insular drops by significant margins. Keef's move aligns with industry logic. Block's response aligns with street code. Two systems, two definitions of loyalty, and neither recognizes the other's authority. That's why the reaction wasn't strategic. It was visceral.
Loyalty for me is strong though. Like, loyalty to me is for everybody that a nigga fucking with, so.
What makes this situation combustible isn't just recent events. It's accumulated resentment. For over a decade, tension simmered beneath the surface between Chief Keef and elements of O'Block. Stories circulated about unpaid bonds, internal disputes, alleged robberies crossed lines. Whether every detail is verified is almost secondary, because in tight-knit environments, perception becomes permanent reality. When Keef moved out of Chicago for safety, built a life in Los Angeles, distanced himself from active street politics, and focused on independence, he reframed survival as evolution. Objectively, that's strategic growth. He avoided returning to a city where legal exposure and real threats remained active. He diversified income, launched new ventures, matured sonically. From an industry perspective, that's intelligent adaptation. But from the block's perspective, distance looked like desertion. And this resonates at a human level because when one member escapes a high-risk environment, those who remain often feel both pride and abandonment simultaneously. That emotional contradiction breeds long-term tension. Now critics will say, if he made it out, he should reach back. That argument appeals to communal responsibility. But here's the analytical reality. Data across entertainment industries shows that artists who remain physically entangled in high-conflict environments statistically face shorter career arcs and higher legal exposure. Survival sometimes requires separation. And separation, in environments built on proximity, feels like betrayal. So when Rooms dropped, it wasn't about a feature. It was about a decade of unresolved emotion finally finding a lightning rod. That's why the reaction wasn't measured. It was volcanic.
Well, you pull out and you shoot 4 times.
Yeah, the gun jammed.
Oh, the gun jammed.
Yeah.
Now layer in the federal pressure surrounding Lil Durk and alleged associates in recent years. Indictments, conspiracy allegations, mounting legal battles. Regardless of outcomes, the optics are severe. When Timothy Leaks publicly tells critics to get some money, it's more than trolling. It reframes the battlefield. He shifts the focus from revenge to relevance, from mourning to motion. Critics will argue he should remain silent out of respect for the dead. That's a moral stance. But strategically, provocation sustains attention. And attention is modern power. Psychologically, humiliation is more destabilizing than anger. By implying the opposition is stuck while he's free, he weaponizes perception.
Yeah, that's the second time I done got shot.
Are you more calm about it this time since you've gone through it before?
Yeah, because like the first time I got shot, I didn't even have a panic attack.
When prosecutors dismissed charges against Timothy Leaks before indictment, citing Georgia's self-defense standards, the legal chapter closed. But the emotional war escalated. For O'Block supporters, the system had failed them. For Tim's camp, the system validated them. Two completely different interpretations of the same footage. And here's where it gets strategic. After walking free, Tim didn't retreat into silence. He leaned into visibility, diss tracks, interviews, subtle provocations, and then that clip addressing O'Block directly. Not defensively, but dismissively. That wasn't accidental. In modern conflict dynamics, Narrative control is as powerful as physical dominance. By speaking confidently and publicly, he reframed himself from accused to affirmed. Now, critics will argue that true strength is quiet, that restraint would have de-escalated tension. But culturally, silence can be interpreted as fear. And in drill, fear is fatal to reputation. So Tim chose projection over pacification. Psychologically, that move forces opponents into reaction mode. It keeps them emotionally engaged while he appears composed. And that's why his statements landed so heavily. Because it wasn't just what he said, it was how unbothered he appeared saying it. In an ecosystem where perception equals power, that composure becomes a weapon.
Man, bro, did a song with Lil Child. Hey, y'all. Shut y'all bitch. They ain't gonna do shit ass niggas up, man.
So what is this really about? It's about identity under pressure. It's about whether drill remains anchored to territorial allegiance or evolves into strategic mobility. Because if collaborations like Rooms continue, the next era of the genre won't be decided by blocks. It'll be decided by who can outmaneuver the algorithm and the indictment simultaneously. That's the future tension. Loyalty versus longevity. Memory versus momentum. And the uncomfortable reality is that survival may no longer look like solidarity. It may look like separation. And that's what no one embedded in the old system wants to admit.
They ain't gonna do shit ass niggas up, man.
And then came the line that cut deeper than any diss track. Get some money. On the surface it sounds generic, but context makes it surgical. At the time, Lil Durk and alleged associates were facing serious federal scrutiny tied to conspiracy accusations. Regardless of legal outcomes, federal cases shift public narrative instantly. When Tim referenced indictments while telling critics to focus on money, he wasn't just flexing. He was reframing hierarchy. He implied stability versus instability, freedom versus federal pressure, movement versus containment. That's why it resonated. Because psychologically, nothing destabilizes a rival like implying they are losing structurally, not emotionally. Now, critics will argue that invoking legal struggles in public only deepens wounds and disrespects ongoing cases. That's a fair ethical critique. But strategically, Tim's framing redirected attention from past violence to present vulnerability. And here's the analytical layer. In the streaming era, controversy amplifies reach. Every debate thread, every reaction video, every repost extended his visibility cycle. Data from digital engagement trends consistently shows that polarizing statements outperform neutral commentary in both impressions and retention. So whether intentional or instinctive, the move aligned with modern attention economics. The deeper contradiction this exposes is uncomfortable. Street codes emphasize loyalty, yet legal systems punish collective retaliation. One path leads to solidarity narratives. The other often leads to sentencing guidelines. And if this trajectory continues, the next phase of drill won't revolve around diss records. It will revolve around who can avoid becoming a case study. Because credibility in this era isn't just about who stood on business. It's about who's still standing, free, and financially advancing 5 years later. And that's the tension nobody wants to confront head-on.
If my other partner was there, like, I got loyalty for him, I got loyalty for my other partner, like, that's just how I am.
And then we arrive at the final contradiction, loyalty versus longevity. When Timothy Leaks speaks about loyalty, it lands differently because his definition was forged in a single irreversible moment outside an Atlanta nightclub. From his perspective, he protected his friend. From O'Block's perspective, he erased their hero. Two moral frameworks, one incident, and the culture split down the middle. Meanwhile, Chief Keef stands miles away from the battlefield, financially stable, legally untouched, strategically detached. That contrast is what makes this story uncomfortable. Because the same code being defended so passionately is the same code that has left Lil Durk fighting federal allegations and others entangled in cases that could carry life-altering consequences. Now critics will argue that loyalty is priceless, that without it, community collapses. And they're not wrong. At a human level, belonging is survival. But here's the cold analysis. When loyalty becomes rigid ideology instead of adaptive principle, it stops protecting people and starts trapping them. Data across urban violence studies consistently shows retaliation cycles increase long-term incarceration probability and economic stagnation. The code promises honor. The outcome often delivers indictments. That's the fracture point drill is standing on right now. Because younger audiences are starting to differentiate between authentic struggle and manufactured perpetuation. Real versus performative. Survival versus symbolism. If this continues, the next era of the culture won't be about who dissed who. It will be about who evolved beyond the battlefield mindset entirely. And that's the part nobody deeply embedded in the old structure wants to say out loud.